Jeremy from Jeremy.net. I'm a comic book artist, writer, creator, self-publisher, and I share my creative process here with you online. If you would like to get 2 Patreon exclusive live streams, be able to read my comic books for free, join our Discord server where we share artwork, give each other feedback, interact outside of the general online space, become a Patreon subscriber. For as little as $2 a month, you get access to all that and more. Head on over to patreon.com/Jeremy. That's patreon.com/GERIMI. If you would like to get a free digital sketchbook, get blog posts delivered right to your inbox, talking about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's inspiring me creatively, work in progress animated GIFs, and more, you can sign up for my free monthly newsletter at newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you would like to purchase physical copies of my comic books, so if you read digitally on Kindle or Comixology, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. That will forward you to my Amazon author page. You can pick up books like my first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods. It is a self-contained novel, a standalone. It's a psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control. If you could also pick up my most recent project, Morningstar, this book tells the story of Lucifer's fall from heaven, but as a Western. It's an 8-issue series broken into 2 volumes. Volume 1 contains issues 1 through 4. Volume 2 contains issues 5 through 8. Both volumes have extensive back matter, character sketches, thumbnails, page layouts, script excerpts, and more. Check out all of that at amazon.jeremy.net. There are links for all of these in the description for the video, except on Twitch where I can't put links in the description. So you can also find all these links at my main website, which is just jeremy.net. That's GERIMI.net. So head on over there, check that out. You can find the Patreon, the newsletter, the link to the Amazon shop, and more. All right. So here we go. I see Nibra Fazetta's in the chat. See Byron's here. Both of you guys made it. Fantastic. And we're going to do something a little bit different today. We are going to do something that, here we go, I haven't done in a hot minute. Fixing bad figure drawings. So I've got my little desktop camera here. And I'm going to pull out my artboard. So what I tend to do for the figure drawing class that I'm taking right now, I'm taking a class with Carl Ganas through his figuredrawingschool.com. And as part of our homework, it's not something that's strictly enforced. But what we do is we go through we can either turn in drawings that we are pleased with or drawings that we're unhappy with and want some feedback on. But part of what I also do in class and what we're highly encouraged to do is to take drawings that just didn't quite come out well and redraw them, to analyze them, to look and try to figure out what we did wrong. So I'm going to be doing that here with you guys, and I'm just going to go through and try and decide which drawings I want to do. So usually what I do is I look for what are the drawings that came out the worst. And I try to just fix those. And I see a couple on here that really gave me problems. I just have to adjust my drawing board a little bit. I've got like one side that I have clipped. It's easier to see if I raise the camera up, but I don't want to have to raise it. Well, I can raise it up a little bit and then bring it back. It's easier to just leave it like this. Point being is that I've got like 2 sheets that are clipped to my drawing board. One sheet that has drawings that I'm looking at, previous week's drawings, and then one that has like the new drawings. So I have to move the new drawings over to the other side. So I've got some space to come in here, take a look at my previous drawings and see what I want to work on. There is one drawing already that kind of stands out at me. And this class that I'm taking is on costume and draped figure. There was one particular pose, the model we had, the great John Mackey. Anyone who's done figure drawing in LA has had John at some point. So whenever a drawing comes out bad, you obviously did something wrong because John just does nothing but incredible poses. So there's one pose he did that was actually close up to the camera. Most of these drawings have been like full figure because it's specifically on costumes. Like for instance, these are I think like 2 minute pose, not 2 minute, definitely too fast for 2 minutes. I think these are like 3 or 5 minute poses, something kind of like this. So for most of the poses, I don't necessarily get a chance to draw the face. Let's see here. I tend to write the times on here. All right, no, I was wrong. So this is what like a 6 minute pose looks like for me in class. And sometimes I will do a drawing and we're given 6 minutes and I'll get something that feels like close to a finished drawing, like that one or this one up here, and they come out pretty well. Sometimes I have 6 minutes and I barely get past a stick figure because they're just, you know, I'm not pulling it off. It's not coming together. Oh. Down here at the end, we were doing 3 minute poses. So that's the 3 minute poses are a little bit more like just simple cartoons, not a whole lot more than stick figures. Whenever we're doing shorter poses, I tend to just make my drawing smaller so that I have time to draw as opposed to drawing a big, like basically I change the size of my drawing depending on the length of time I have for to draw. For instance, you can see with this drawing, this thing is smaller than my palm. So I definitely, when we're doing 3 minute poses, or maybe it's a little bit smaller than in terms of height, a little bit smaller than my palm. I definitely will shorten down that, scale down that drawing size so I can draw something in 3 minutes. Versus a drawing that's a 6 minute pose, you can see the one in the top left corner, you know, almost twice as much time. The drawing is almost twice as large. So let's see here. And James in the chat says, sometimes I don't know what to draw. Well, for me, that's one of the best things I like about figure drawing classes is that you really just have to sit there and draw what's in front of you. And that doesn't mean you're just copying and trying to do what's called sight size, where you're just measuring and drawing, measuring and drawing. Drawing from the figure drawing from a model, even if you're doing it in an online session like I was, it still highly engages your imagination because you need to understand the same way that you would draw through a figure, trying to draw it kind of like 3-dimensionally, like they're almost like see-through when you're drawing your basic structure. You're doing that same act, but with a live person in front of you. So the live person helps with the proportion. The live person gives you the gesture and the pose that you're working from, but you're still engaging your imagination. And there are a few different websites where you can draw from just online sessions for free. For instance, there's one called the Crocus Cafe. I'm trying to look, hang on, let me open it. I've got a little tab on the side here. There's a website that one of the guys from my Patreon recommended, and it's called Line of Action. And the website is just line-of-action.com. So definitely check that website out. And that place, you can set it up on the website. I'm looking at it on my screen right now. You can do figure drawings. You can do faces and expressions. You can do animal drawing. You can do environments. You can do hands and feet. And what it does is it pulls up photo reference and it creates a figure drawing session for you. You can tell it whether you want to do long poses or short poses. You can tell it how many minutes you want the poses to be. You can put on other constraints on the session to just kind of customize whatever type of session you want. And then you just sit and draw from it. And I will tell you from years of figure drawing that sometimes you get it right. And most of the time you're sitting there and you're kind of struggling and you're failing and you're not getting the proportions right or the volumes right. And that's how you know you're learning. It's because if you're drawing it and everything's coming out perfectly, then you're doing stuff you already know how to do. So I definitely recommend trying to do stuff where you're pushing yourself. If you're failing, if you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough, or you're not trying things that are challenging enough for you. So it's okay to go and do sucky drawings, which, again, that goes right to what I'm doing now, which is I had a figure drawing session. A lot of the stuff some drawings came out well. some didn't. And I'm going back to look at the ones that didn't and trying to fix them. So let's see here. Yeah, James mentions he was taking sessions at Alameda Artworks, but the person who was holding them moved out of the area. You know, I'm trying to remember. Well, I don't know if they still do them, but at Nucleus, not in Alameda, but in Alhambra. Wait, no, Alameda is a lot farther away than where I'm at. You can always find figure drawing sessions somewhere. It's challenging, but looking online, you can find some. Like I said, that Line of Action website is a great resource, at least for being able to practice from home. It's not as good as being in front of a live model, but it is something. So definitely good to check that out. Let's see here. Amar's in the chat. Says good afternoon to me and to all. And James mentions drawing strange. I like drawing strange creatures. One thing that I have not done in a very, very long time is going to the zoo. And even though the zoo is not strange creatures in the sense of fictional or fantasy creatures, a lot of times in order to get a good sense of how to make up a creature, drawing from live animals is very, very good for that. Like I have found some friends of mine that I have not seen in way too long that I originally met in figure drawing class. They started a group that would try to go to the zoo or go places for like little drawing excursions a couple of times a year. And I unfortunately fell out a lot of times, mostly because I was working on comics. But a couple of trips we had where we took to the zoo, they were some of the most invigorating, challenging, fun drawing sessions. Because with animals, they're not holding still like humans. So you kind of have to maybe start. This is something I learned from reading one of James Gurney's books. I think it might have been Imaginative Realism. But I think one of the things that he said in terms of drawing creatures is that because when you're drawing real life animals, they don't hold still, what he recommends is maybe to just start 2 or 3 drawings on the same page. And maybe there's one where the creature's the animal's facing towards you, one where it's kind of walking away, one that's a profile, and you just you observe the animal for a little bit. You figure out what are the things that it actually comes back to in terms of behavior, and try to have maybe 3 drawings that are in similar poses. That way, when the creature comes back to, let's say there's a place where it's nibbling at food, and every few minutes it goes back and nibbles a little bit more food, then you can have something that's kind of similar or close to that pose. And then when it's like laying down, maybe you get like the laying down pose. And that way you can sit there for like an hour or 40 minutes or whatever. And just over the course of that time, it gets up, it moves around, and you just draw the other thing it's doing. And then you draw the other thing it's doing. Because it will not sit still for you to work on one drawing. That's just not going to happen. Let's see here. But yeah, I'm not sure what zoos are up in like the San Jose area. I don't know if there is a San Jose zoo, but obviously being up in the Bay Area, I'm sure there's a zoo up there somewhere. That's a really fun. The thing about it is that it's a fun excursion, but I preface it or I qualify it by saying it's fun, but it's challenging because it's easy to go up there, and if you think everything's going to come out perfect, you might get really frustrated. But instead, you go there and say, you know what? If you go in with the mindset that you're going to learn a lot and have a lot of fun, even if the drawings may come out really weird or not great drawings, I think setting the proper expectations is setting yourself up for having a better time. So let's see here. And Amar also says, also, if you love different strange looking creatures, look at insects, microscopic life, and underwater life. Yeah, that is, he says that will fuel all the ideas you need. Um, yes, very, very true. I've got a reference book around somewhere, and it's just called The Deep. And it just has strange, really, really strange creatures of all kinds at different levels of depth in the ocean. And you want to talk about like creature alien design. This stuff looks like it's right out of Mars Attacks. And they're real life creatures that are on our planet. Let's see here. Let's see. And James says, I recently moved to SoCal a few months back, so I'll look into zoos. Something else I was going to tell you, if you move to SoCal, there is a website, and it's just called, if you just type in Gallery Girls figure drawing, you will find them. There is a woman, Jennifer Fabos Patton, who is a great longtime figure drawing artist in LA, and she started organizing a lot of the different figure drawing nights so that, you know, all the models working all over LA could kind of start cross promoting and getting, making sure that people knew how much great figure drawing there is in Southern California. And literally at pretty much any given night of the week, you can find a place to go do live figure drawing. So definitely check out that website. I mostly just stick with the class that I'm in, but I always stay on the Gallery Girls newsletter because I like to know what events are going on, even if I'm not going. But yeah, there's tons of figure drawing that you could go to throughout the week. And some of them, you know, it gives you all kinds of options. Some are like long pose and people are working on paintings, you know, where you'll be working on one pose for like 2 hours. Some are animation style where you're doing like 5-minute, 10-minute, 3-minute poses, quick gesture. A lot uninstructed, some that are. And obviously the ones that are instructed are going to be a little bit more expensive because you're paying not just for the model's time, but also for the instruction. But there's plenty that are uninstructed, meaning you just show up, there's a model there, maybe there's somebody who's organizing the event itself, but the model's just taking poses, maybe their costume, depending on the situation, maybe it's nude, working from nude models, all kinds of varieties throughout the week, week after week, month after month. So if you're in the Southern California area now, definitely check out gallerygirls.com. And let's see here. I'm going to come back because I missed a couple of comments real quick. But hey, Beckles has just wanted to drop in and say hi. Hi, Beckles. Thank you for popping in. Hope you're enjoying yourself, having a good weekend. Let's see here. Yeah, James also said it's fun to sit and watch people and draw too. I mean, that's something you can do at any mall or park. That is also fun. So Negra Frazetta says, Jeremy, what's your thoughts on drawing from life versus master studies? My thought is remove the versus. It's not an either or, it is both. You need to do both. I have found that I learn a ton from doing master studies, specifically about decision making, because sometimes one of the biggest problems you can have is that you don't have a clear picture in your mind of what the right thing is in a drawing, whether it's the right pose, the right anatomy, the right style in terms of like how you're actually using line work or tones, and being able to look at someone else's creative decisions and study them and see that even if in art, one of the big things we have to remember is that there is no one right way to do things. I mean, yes, there's good proportion versus bad proportion. There's good ways to do perspective. You know, there's right perspective and wrong perspective, right anatomy and wrong anatomy. But in terms of stylistically, there's no wrong styles. And someone can even break the rules of anatomy and proportion and perspective if they're doing it with purpose and consistency and in a way that has a desired effect. So seeing someone making decisions through a master study, you're not necessarily studying their style, you're studying their thought process and their decisions. And master studies are incredibly invaluable for that. And of course, like I said, obviously, I'm a big fan of drawing from life. And what you want to do, what I encourage, is that you go back and forth. You go and you do some master studies and you see the types of decisions that a sergeant, a John Singer Sargent makes, or a Rembrandt makes, or Da Vinci, or any of the old masters, or any, classic illustrators like J.C. Leyendecker or Howard Pyle. You go through and you look at the decisions that they make, and you study their thought process, and then you go out on your own and you're working from live models in a workshop, or maybe you've got a friend posing for you, whatever. And now you have seen the type of thought process that they say, and you have to try and adapt it. You have to try and use the information you've learned from them and see, well, what happens if I make these decisions with a different pose? What happens if I make these decisions with a model that has a different body type? So the gesture, the pose might be similar to something you did a master study of, but the gesture will feel different because it's a different person. The vibe is different. Maybe you doing something where it's the exact same pose that one model took, but one model is wearing like a skin tight piece of clothing, and the other model is wearing like a flowing dress or a cape or something else. And now you're forced to try and take what you learned in the master study and adapt it. So that is my thought on master studies versus drawing from life. There is no versus. And in fact, I think a lot of things in studying art, people want binary answers. They want A or B, do this or that. And anytime that you are confronted with a binary choice, my instinct is to try to combine them both, because being forced into binary A or B choices it's a false choice. It's a trap. To quote a famous calamari, it's a trap. So let's see here. Yeah, Amar mentioned more about underwater creatures. And he says, I use underwater creatures for my angels because they're otherworldly. Also, I can use it in a way to tie in it as a place some of the fallen live and have created underwater societies. Let me see. Back to James. He's talking about in terms of drawing people. And he says, especially if there's a convention nearby and there are cosplayers. You know what? I mean, hell, a great costume figure drawing session is like just a cosplay playground. I think that would actually be a great thing, is to have like figure drawing sessions from cosplay models. I know that. Well, I mean, I have been to some sessions where they've done that. I've been to sessions. I've been to a couple of conventions where they had figure drawing sessions at the convention. I think there was one year in at San Diego Comic-Con, which I haven't been to in a long time. I think there was a session where we're working from models, and it was like Mike Mignola was leading the session. And I think there was another one that maybe had Strangers in Paradise. Terry Moore was the featured artist there, working from models. But yeah, working from cosplayers, that is great. I mean, it can be challenging because they come up with such innovative costumes that you're really working your ass off to try and communicate everything that their costume is doing. But I think for a lot of things, I try to have the sense of something being hard does not mean that it's bad. Kind of like I said at the start of this stream, frequently it's the challenging stuff that's where you're going to learn and grow. So when you're getting your ass kicked by a drawing, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Or getting your ass kicked by a pose that a model is taking. Let's see here. And Amar says, drawing from life can be and is a master's. Drawing from life can be and is a master's study because one can spend a lifetime to master. Well, I think when they're talking about master studies, they're talking specifically about doing a copy from a particular artist. But yeah, I understand what you're saying ontologically in terms of just like the wordplay. And let's see here. Cassie Da Vinci's is back from the ashes. Welcome back. Good to see you again. And Amar says, so you're saying then that all artists are non-binary or should have non-binary thinking? I think, well, first off, again, to say all artists is a binary. It's all or none. So, I tend to reject those type. I tend to reject absolutes because I think what I do think is that art is about exploration, and exploration by itself can be hampered by absolutes. So I try not to. I encourage people not to think in terms of yes or no, A or B, or even binary versus non-binary. I prefer to think of art as fluid. That is what art is. Art crosses boundaries. Art contradicts itself. Art is full of paradoxes and challenges and things that don't make sense. And that doesn't mean that there aren't rules, but that's one of the reasons why they tell you learn the rules before you break them. Invariably, making art is frequently about breaking rules in inventive ways. So it would be false for me to say that there are no rules, but those rules unto themselves are, we think of rules as laws to be obeyed. In art, rules are a framework for the language of art. And once you learn the language, then you can get inventive with the language. But the language itself is not meant to be codified, solidified, trapped in one particular static way of approaching it. So let's see here. Oh, yeah, James says, I know Comic-Con gets pretty crowded, but since I'm only a few hours away from San Diego, it's much more convenient for me to travel now. Yeah, San Diego is a great convention. I don't go very often. Like, I think it's been almost 10 years since the last time I went, more because it's expensive and it's, like you said, it's super crowded. It's still a great show, and I recommend anyone who's never gone before to go. I was lucky in that I started going when I was in high school. So I've had a chance to probably go like at least 8 or 10 times over the course of my life. I've been to San Diego many, many, many times. So because of that, I don't feel bad about like not going very often anymore. Personally, I just like going to smaller conventions. Well, first, that's the thing. To go to that show is so expensive, but shows like WonderCon, which for me, that's my home-based show now. You know, WonderCon, there's some smaller shows. A lot of the creators I see at those smaller shows, you know, those are the same people that I would see at San Diego. So for me, again, I think that San Diego is a great show, but I can get a lot of the joy that I get from a comic convention from those smaller shows that I would get from doing a big show. And it's not San Diego's fault that it's such a big show. It's a victim of its own success. It's a victim of being such a great experience that so many people want to go to. So I'm not saying I'll never go to San Diego again, but more often than not, I'd usually rather go to a smaller show where I can have a more intimate experience, where I can exhibit there and it doesn't cost me an arm and a leg, and I can just, you know, being on a convention floor where I can actually have a conversation with people and be able to hear them and not have to like talk at the top of my lungs. You know, I like smaller shows. And that's just after having the experience over the past few years of being able to visit a bunch of conventions, talk to a lot of different people, exhibitors, fans. Let's see here. Swam is in the chat. Hi, how you doing? Thanks for popping in. See, Amar says in terms of the whole binary, non-binary, he says that that's what MJ said. I'm bad, which means he is so good that he is bad. Let's see here. Negro Frazetta says, in modern day, can an artist make a living doing portrait painting? Was Sargent able to pay his bills? I don't know the answer to that, and I should, because I have a very great, large Sargent art book that I have not read yet. And when I say read, I mean a lot of the art books that I've been buying over the past few years have really great biographies, and they kind of walk you through the artist's entire career and work life. In terms of making a living, I was just listening to an interview not long ago, and I think it might have been on Proko's channel during his Ukraine. He's been doing live streams to raise charity for raise money funds for to support Ukrainians during this the Russian invasion, and I actually contributed. I donated some money to that campaign. But there's a lot of there were a lot of different interviews and conversations. They had a wide variety of artists in there, and I think one of the things that they talked about was that if your concern is making money, then you are better off finding the best non-art job you can to make as much money as possible. Go become a banker. Go become an engineer. Go find something else that will make you a shit ton of money. Go do that, and then just make artwork for yourself, and don't worry about selling it, because there are no guarantees that you will make a living. Making a successful living, a lot of money from an artist, it's not that artists, let me put it this way, the starving artist trope does not have to be true, but it is still very difficult to make a lot of money as an artist. So if your concern is simply, I want to make a living and I want to make art, don't tie the two together. Just go find a way to make a good living and then make artwork for yourself. If you do want to make a living as an artist, then it's not going to be the people who can make a living as an artist aren't the John Singer Sargents. Remember this way, they're few and far between. I'm just redrawing this drawing that I did over here because I feel like this drawing, I changed so much of the angle, like it's more of an up angle looking up at the figure than the original one, which is kind of like the model is more at eye level and the bottom, we're looking down at the rest of his body. And I kind of changed his proportions and made them more heroic. And that wasn't intentional. This is just because I'm drawing while I'm talking. And I find that when I do that, I don't always pay as much attention to things I should. So it's another thing about me and I'm going to continue with the finance thing. But I'm just mentioning one of the things when I'm fixing drawings that don't come out well is I'll draw it once and try to fix it. And it doesn't work. And I draw the other one. And I'm like, oh, well, there's things here that look better than the first one. But there's things here that look worse. And I draw it again. And I will honestly end up drawing the same thing like 3-5 different times until I figure out what it is that was wrong. And for me, that is a big part of artistic growth. Is most people, I think, just draw something. And then if it doesn't come out right, they get frustrated and they get mad and they move on. If you don't figure out what it is you're doing wrong, you're just going to keep doing the wrong thing over and over again. And that's an important lesson for artistic growth, is teaching yourself to continue to grow and experiment, to if you haven't learned a lesson, then to keep repeating the lesson until you learn it. Like if there's a particular angle of the body that you always draw wrong, you're going to continue to draw that angle wrong until you figure out why it is that you don't understand the anatomy, why it is you don't understand the volumes. If you don't ever fix that problem, you're just going to have that problem in your art. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, back to the financial thing. If you're worried about making a living as an artist, then you could always pursue concept art. Now, the thing about it is that video game studios hire concept artists. That's a place where you can make a regular living, and you can make a good living if you're good at it. It's also highly competitive. So that's something to be aware of. And I can't tell you about the ins and outs of concept artwork because it is a field that I've never worked in. I've worked as a toy designer, and in that, I'm not even doing, well, I mean, I spent a whole week doing some serious industrial design this week. But in general, most of my job involves graphic design as opposed to industrial design, taking style guide assets and positioning and posing them and recomposing them so that they fit existing products, as opposed to designing. Industrial design is designing a new product out of whole cloth. You're figuring out the size, the dimensions, the specs, the swivel points, how thick and thin the materials are. That's industrial design. That's the work of a product designer in terms of physical products, because product design is also used in web development a lot for developing apps and websites. That's something that's been confusing to me in recent years. Is a lot of times I'll see people talking about being product designer, and I'll realize they're talking about the web development product design, not physical industrial design. That's all a tangent. Point being is that when I hear of people making a full-time living as an artist, it tends to be as a concept designer or a character designer or an environment artist for animation or in video games. Doing what John Singer Sargent does, doing what Leyendecker does. So much of the work they did in the past was for advertising or illustration for magazines. And as we know, magazines, it's not that magazines are 100% dead, but they're definitely not using illustration in the way that they did back in the golden age of illustration. So what you need to look at is, what are the markets where art is being used right now? And more often than not, most of those markets tend to be concept design for games and animation. So I say, if you're interested in making a living as an artist, that's what I would pursue. But I would also say that you need to do a lot of research. Don't just rely on me telling you what I know, because I don't work in concept design. And you need to talk to people who are concept designers. In fact, there was a great interview with Trent Kuenga, longtime Blizzard artist, longtime video game concept artist. But he also started out in comics. That's where I first became familiar with him, with his Twilight Monk series. But anyway, he had a great video. He had a long interview with a Christian from who works for Proco. He has this thing called the Sketchy Van podcast, and we talked about it a little bit on the Patreon live stream. But anyway, there's a great video he did, I think it was like maybe a couple months ago, with Trent Kuenga about working in concept design. And the video series is specifically about why people make art and, you know, the motivations and the goals for doing it. And I would just say that you need to decide for yourself whether you want to make art or make a living as an artist. I don't think that making a living as a fine artist, the way that Sargent did or Leyendecker did, I don't think that is as viable these days. It's possible. There are artists that do it, but the number is extremely limited. And I think that those artists are just as good at marketing as they are at draftsmanship and painting. So there's that. Then there's, then there's the fact of just the places where artists are making living or someplace else. And I'm curious for everyone else in the chat, if you guys have different thoughts about it, if there's anyone in the chat who works in concept design and has different thoughts about it, or if there's resources that they've seen for people working in there, then what are their thoughts? Now, Amar mentions that he did a post on our Patreon Discord And he says, do you see my post for the Webtoons contest with the prize for 50K? Yeah, Webtoons has a contest for $50,000 for doing the best fight scene. And he says, you do a 60-panel story, and the story will get picked and featured on the platform. He said it can help with an audience building. Let's see here. And I saw that post, but I also thought to myself, I could work on a comic for Webtoons. I think that if you don't know what you want to do, and you're like, I would like to make $50,000 by doing a cartoon for Webtoons, I think that's a great opportunity. I wasn't going to do it not because I have anything against Webtoons, but because I'm more concerned about my next comic book, my next graphic novel that I'm doing. And I really have to focus on writing and working out the story issues for that. And chasing a contest is just going to distract me from it. I'm curious, Amar, did you enter that contest? Let's see here. James says, right now, having more of a focus on comics and artists is the main draw when it comes to me for smaller conventions. Let's see, Cassie Da Vinci says, an interesting thing I discovered why artists like Picasso or Dali become successful: marketing. Yeah, marketing is very important. And the problem is that if you put the marketing before the art, you may not necessarily make artwork that comes from and it's not necessarily about being honest. It's that I think a lot of times if you're making artwork that's just targeted to hit a demographic, you're not making something that's really authentic. And you're not making something that you genuinely enjoy creating, or it comes from a place that's really personal. And I think the best artwork is when for me, good marketing is not about making something that's for a targeted audience. It's about making something that you yourself are already passionate about and being able to find the audience for that work and then getting it in front of them. It's not, dragons are popular, so I'm going to make dragon paintings, or I'm going to make dragon comics. It's about, you already love dragons, so you're making the thing. Like if you have a really small niche thing that you're interested in, you go and you find the other people that are interested in that niche, and you create the work and you share it with them. I realized the same guy, one, I'm doing the same mistakes over again where I'm drawing it like an up view, and two, I'm turning him into Hellboy. Like I'm looking at the perspective that I laid out here and the rough basic silhouette, and it's basically Hellboy. I'm drawing Hellboy in a big pirate hat. Let's see here. Amar mentions they're offering 10 places of prizes. The winners also get Clip Studio licenses, which can be a giveaway. So Cassiel says, what matters how good you are in art if you don't know how to do marketing? Well, you know what? I mean, there are artists that are not very great artists who are great marketers and have a great career. There are also artists who are horrible at business, but they're brilliant artists and they also have a great career. There are artists who are, very talented and never find an audience or never learn how to market themselves. And like, for instance, look at Van Gogh. Van Gogh is the example that unfortunately gets cited when we do talk about the starving artist stereotype, because Van Gogh, as I recall, did not sell a single painting in his lifetime. So Van Gogh did not succeed. Van Gogh was the starving artist. He was supported by his brother his whole life. Meanwhile, you've got artists that are not very good, and they just are never good enough to build an audience. What I'm saying is everyone's looking for absolutes. Everyone's looking for the perfect formula. And the reality is that you don't go to war with the army that you want. You go to war with the army you have. First off, you should try to be the best artist that you can be in terms of your draftsmanship, your understanding of the fundamentals. You should just try to be a good artist, period. A lot of times the artists, again, like Picasso was a great marketer. And I think that marketing is extremely important, But if you put the marketing before the fundamentals, it's real hard to I think build an audience, because if you're trying to sell people something that nobody wants, that doesn't do you any good either. Doesn't do the audience any good. But the thing with Picasso was also another artist who, by the time he was an adult, his father was an art teacher, so he had been learning how to draw from birth. By the time he was 18, he was already as good as any of the old masters in terms of his draftsmanship. So when you're already, the thing about it is this: when you have mastered the fundamentals to the point where you don't have to think about them, then you can think about other stuff. Now, that other stuff can be, oh, well, let me think about what is the actual content and meaning of what I'm trying to make. You can think about the message. Why are you making this particular art? But you can also start thinking about who you're making this art for. That's the marketing side. I think artists who never quite get a hold of the fundamentals never get the opportunity to start thinking about the deeper thoughts about why they're making it and who their audience is. And that's where the marketing comes in. I mean, that also can play a part in the making of the art itself, but the why, it's really hard to focus on the why if you are struggling with the how. And I, for myself, I always tell people, people will occasionally ask me for marketing advice because I've been selling my own books and I've been on YouTube for a long time. I have not mastered marketing. I just haven't given up. That's the difference. I'm still making stuff and I'm still selling stuff, but I am by no means a master of marketing, and I have an infinite amount to learn. I have just as much to learn about marketing as I do about art itself, because I'm still focusing on improving my craft. I mean, as you can see here, I'm taking a figure drawing that I did that I wasn't happy with, and I'm redrawing it over and over again, trying to get better. Yeah. I'm not sure if that answered any questions. That particular rant just kind of went off to the side. Let's see here. Amar says, that's what I choose to do. Most really good or master artists have been starving artists because they are not appreciated until they die. This is mediocre to somewhat good artists are that are great at marketing do the best. Let's see here. I see Mr. Q is in the chat. I'm way behind on comments, so I apologize. It may take me a while to catch up to you. Like, looking at that, I'm about 5 minutes behind in the chat. So apologies if I don't get to your comments. I'm going to try and continue scrolling through and slowly catch up to everybody. Let me see. In fact, I'm going to skip through some of these comments only because I want to try and catch up to where we're at now. And let's see, Cassiel says, I know so many good artists in what they do, but some of them have difficulties paying bills or something else. Well, I mean, I'm one of those artists in the sense that I have a day job that does not involve what I do in my personal art is very different from what I do in my day job. So I have a day job that is creative. I enjoy that job, and I'm lucky to have that job. And it is an art job, but it is not drawing. I do very little drawing in my day job. So I am somebody who, I'm not using my personal skills to make a living. So I would fall into that category. And yeah, it's true. There's a lot of artists who don't make a living, even if that makes it sound like I think that I am dope and talented and deserve to be able to do my own work full time. For me, I feel like it's a privilege to be able to make personal artwork, and I try to spend my personal time doing things that are gratifying to me. And the whole point for me of putting it out in the world and sharing it with others is that someday I would like to spend every day doing just this. But hell, the most recent episode of the Dark Artist Society podcast, I'm all about dropping other people's shows. The most recent podcast I listened to, I was listening to Chet Zar talking about the fact that you know, the dream for most artists is to just sit around and make art all day, but he still has to spend a lot of his day doing business stuff, and he doesn't get to spend as much time drawing as he'd like, and that's the or painting as he'd like. That's the truth for most artists, is that when you move into making your living from art, there's a lot of business that you have to take care of that isn't necessarily just being in front of the canvas or in front at the drawing table. Because you're running a small business. There's people, there's contracts you have to read and approve. There's business deals you have to set up, whether it's for a gallery exhibition, whether it's working with a particular printer, whether it's fulfilling a Kickstarter. There's all kinds of work that you're always going to have to do. Yeah. So my point is that the idea of doing the thing you love versus having to do other stuff just to make a living, even when you do what you love, you have to do other things to make a living. The art just doesn't come, the money doesn't come just from putting lines on a page or putting paint on a canvas. It doesn't like you do that and the money just appears. You still have to actually sell that thing. You have to put it out in the world. You have to put it up on your website. You have to do postings. If you're doing NFTs, you've got to list the NFT. You've got to put the word out. All of that stuff, again, that comes into marketing. Marketing, the term marketing means to bring a product to the market. That is marketing. And bringing it to the market doesn't mean just posting it. It means bringing it to the market and then letting people know that it is available. Marketing isn't about tricking someone into giving you money. It's about finding somebody that wants something and connecting them with the thing they want. So the idea is to make something that someone wants. And this goes back into what I said before. It's not about, oh, you're making stuff. Sometimes, you remember this way, you could just draw hot, sexy naked girls, and there's a market for that. So you could sell those. And to be honest, I like drawing hot, sexy, naked girls. So maybe I should lean into that. That's something I've thought about, is leaning more into that kind of stuff. Point being is that what you don't want to do it just because there's a market for it. You want to do it because there's a market for it and it's something you like. I can't remember who I was talking to. Oh no, I was talking to one of my coworkers, and we were talking about fan art. And I always told him, look, I'm not anti-fan art. You should draw fan art if there's things that you love. Draw fan art of it and then sell it to people that are also fans of that thing. But I'm saying, if I were to just start doing a bunch of Pokemon pieces just because Pokemon is popular, I've never played Pokemon in my life. I don't give a damn about Pokemon. If you do, I'm glad you enjoy it. And I'm like, good, have fun. It would be disingenuous for me to do that when I don't have any interest in it. Now, if all of a sudden I start playing Pokemon Go and I really got into it and I'm like, oh man, I want to do some Pokemon fan art, then yeah, it makes sense to do things if you genuinely are a fan of it. Let's see here. Wow. Oh, Corey Kerr's in the chat. Corey, always good to hear from you. Good to see you. Corey says the recent animation boom has opened a lot of doors for artists. That's a good point. I know Negro Fazzetti, you were asking about jobs and making money. I've always said, if you want to work in animation, outside of LA, there's definitely places doing animation in New York. I would look at those places, try to find an internship or an entry-level job. I would say production assistant. That's the job you want. You want to become a PA at an animation house. You want to get your foot in the door and find an animation house that needs a production assistant, and you will learn all about how animation is really produced. And even if you want to be an independent animator, I think working and seeing how a studio does it can still be extremely educational. I remember one of my best experiences in college. I wasn't a PA, but I was an intern at a Nickelodeon animation when I was in college. And just being able to observe the production process and the pipeline from the inside was so valuable. I think that you can learn a lot and then end up taking what you learn and applying it to your own personal work. So I highly, highly, highly recommend that. Let's see here. Now, Byron says, fine art as a living is pretty much regulated to portraiture nowadays. He says you can't get exhibition connections. If you can't get exhibition connections, you aren't going to make much in that way. And he also says, however, I think cartoonists and character illustrators are in a booming period, and that ties into what Corey said right afterwards. The recent animation booms opened up a lot of doors for artists. So Amar says, this is back to the question I asked him about that Webtoons contest, whether he entered it. And he said, not yet. I've been thinking of it. He says, I feel it will take less than a month to work on because the minimum is 60 panels, which you can complete in a week or two. Yeah. I mean, for me, I was curious whether you did it because I tend to avoid contests, not because I think contests are a bad thing. I do not think that contests are a bad thing. I repeat, contests are great for exposure. They're great for getting your work out in front of people. What they are bad for is derailing you from your goals if you already have something you want to do. If you don't know what you want to do artistically, then yeah, you should totally enter a contest. However, for me, I have a current story that I'm struggling to break. And yes, I'm having writing problems. Somebody who has a video that helps people with writing, I went back and I watched my own video to remind me of the things I should be doing. I have the comic book that I'm currently trying to break the story on. I've got multiple comics that I want to do after that story. And if I just start entering this contest, even if I win the contest, then it's like, all right, then there's always going to be another contest, another contest, another contest. And I'm never going to get around to working on the comic that I need to be working on. And I honestly don't think that whatever it is, the $50,000, let me this way, the $50,000 prize is not going to be enough that I can quit my day job and just work on making comics full time. It's a good boost of money. It's like a nice grant, but it's not going to be enough that I can stop. All it means is that I'm going to be that much farther behind on the project that I want to work on. So I would rather give up the potential $50,000 of a contest that I might not even win to put it towards, damn it, I just broke my pencil. See, I'm getting hot talking about all this, getting excited. I'm snapping the pencils, I'm pressing too hard. You got me under pressure. Damn it. But this is why when I'm figure drawing, I always have multiple pencils sharpened and ready to go right afterwards. So that if I break in a session, I don't have to stop and sharpen them because you have to sharpen it with a razor blade and then sand it down. This way, I just switch over and keep going. I would rather trade the potential wins of a contest if I'm going to gamble, because that's really what it is. Even though I'm gambling on my talent, if I'm going to gamble, I would rather gamble on making the comic that I want to make and putting all my energy towards that versus chasing this contest and chasing the next contest and chasing the next contest. So if you're not sure what you want to work on, then go enter the Webtoons contest. And I'm not talking to Amar. I'm talking more to Negro Frazetta or anyone else out there who is thinking about wanting to get their work in front of other people. I don't want to think that I'm telling them that I don't want them to think I'm throwing shade on the Webtoons contest. But what I am saying is that if you have a larger goal, you have a specific story that you want to tell, I am much more in favor of putting all of your energy towards the thing that is yours, that you want to do. And let me put it this way, if I had a fight scene in the comic that I am doing that I wanted to, that already met the requirements, then I don't think there's anything wrong with putting that in a contest, as long as the people who run the contest don't end up owning that or getting any copyright, getting any copyrights to the entry to the contest. As long as that doesn't happen, I'm fine with taking something I'm already doing that fits a contest and entering it. But that said, if you ask me, do I want to keep working on my own thing or working on a contest? To me, that's like saying someone is hiring me to do freelance. And it's like, well, do I want to take on that freelance gig to do that? That's the way that I look at these things. Is for me, a contest is sort of like someone hiring you to do freelance, but they're not even guaranteeing they're going to pay you. That's what it is. It's like doing freelance on spec. To me, that's what a contest is. And at that point, you might as well just be trying to put together a portfolio to get freelance work. That's really what it is. All right. tons of comments here, and I'm way behind. So, and I'm not going to end the stream right here. We're at an hour, but I'm going to keep going because I think that we're having really interesting conversations. By the way, Mr. Q, I'm almost to your first comment. So if you're still watching, I'm sorry. It's taken me like 20 minutes to get to it. I'm going to speed through. In fact, let me just jump to yours and then I'm going to hop up because I've been, Negro Frazetta, you my boy, I've been giving you tons of love. Let me see what Mr. Q says real quick, and then I'm going to come back to some of the comments above his. So Mr. Q says, I recently found your channel because I was thinking of creating my own comic, but I'm still caught up in solidifying the story. What's your advice for storytelling? Okay, that's an easy question. I have a video called Writing a Comic Book from Start to Finish. And I walk you through my writing process for that, for comics and visual storytelling. And I would recommend, it's on the home page of my channel, and I have a playlist for writing, and it should be like, it's definitely in that playlist. But if you were to actually just search my channel for writing, or even if you just typed in Jeremy, Gerimi, and writing in YouTube, then it'll show you that whole video. But because you're here and you're watching now, I will give you the thumbnail, the cliff notes of that video, which is, I'm an outliner. I'm somebody who likes to really work out my plot and my story structure. So and there are people, there's this idea of plotters versus pantsers. Pantsers being people who write by the seat of their pants. They just start on page one and make up the story as they go along. One is not better than the other. It's just a matter of how your brain works. But the cliff notes is that what I like to do is I like to start with my basic beginning, middle, and end. Like if you're going to sit down and tell a friend, like, oh, I just saw The Matrix. Oh, really? I've never seen it before. What's it about? If you were to just sit down and try to tell them not the entire movie beat by beat, but if you were just to sit down and tell them in like 1 or 2 minutes the overall idea of the story, that for me is how I write, where I try to work out a simple version, like no more than 2 paragraphs in terms of what's the whole story. I do that, and then I look at it and say, am I happy with it? Maybe, maybe not. I treat that writing as a thumbnail. And what I'll do is I may write that paragraph 3 times, 5 times. I'll write different versions until I have a simple version of the story that I am happy with. And once I do that, then I just start breaking it down. So I do the same thing now with issues. I decide how long I want the story to be. Is it a 4-issue series? Is it a 6-issue series? Is it a 12-issue series? Whatever that number of issues it is, the same way that I made that idea of that simple outline, what is the beginning, middle, and end of the story? What's it about? I break it down by issue. So I write one of those for each issue. Then I write them down within the issues. I write them, do that for each page. And I just keep breaking it down and breaking it down into smaller chunks. There is a old expression, and I cannot remember who to credit it to, but the expression is, how do you eat an elephant? The answer is 1 bite at a time. That is my writing advice. And I see that you have more comments in there. So hopefully, actually, no, I do see some more comments in there, and I will try to catch up with those. But let me see. There was a couple of questions right before I jumped into Mr. Q's. Oh yeah, Negro Frazetta asked if I've heard of Derek Laufman. He's a successful cartoonist without animation skills, and he's always working. I would like to start studying him. Well, yeah, I have heard of Derek Laufman. He did a lot of style guide artwork for Marvel, for Disney, for a lot of superhero stuff, and it looks amazing. I think he's a great artist, and he's very worth studying. So, yeah, I guess it wasn't really a question. You were just mentioning him and whether I'd heard of him. Yeah, I've heard of him. He's amazing. Yeah, definitely study his work. Let's see. Cassiel says, Cassie Da Vinci says, a small amount of artists become successful, being famous, impact, influence, how wealthy, being good at what they are, and sometimes not even needing to do much marketing. I think that to a degree that is true, but that comes to the other idea, which is also a marketing idea. But the idea is being so good they can't ignore you. And there is a marketing person. It's not. I don't think it's Seth Godin, but it's one of those guys who you would see hanging out with Seth Godin at a workshop. There's a book called "So Good They Can't Ignore You," and that's the premise of the book. Is that's your marketing is being awesome. Your business card, your calling card is being awesome. You just get so good that everyone that sees what you do wants more of it. So it's just excelling at your craft. And I think that everyone should aspire to that level of work and quality. I aspire to that. That's the reason why I'm working on my craft instead of just marketing. I mean, I've read books on marketing, but I've realized that much in the same way that I can kind of I feel like the same way that I feel like a contest can kind of distract me from my actual goals of making the thing. I found that I've been putting the cart before the horse a bit in the marketing, only in that my craft is still not where I want it to be. And I'm still trying to work, as you can see at this very moment, on improving that craft. So yes, it is very important to study those things. And yes, see, the problem is you guys are looking for a single answer. And the truth is that, yeah, there are artists who aren't necessarily that great, who make a great living because they're good at marketing. There's artists who are amazing and make a great living just because they're amazing. There's artists who are amazing who starve. There are artists that are great businessmen, but no one wants what they're selling. All those things are true. So you can't look for one answer. You need to look at what your own personal strengths are, what your own personal interests are, how well how hard you're willing to work to improve the things that you're weak at. In a perfect world, an artist would be an incredible draftsperson, innovative and inventive, and great at marketing. That would be in a perfect world. There's very few artists that are great at all of those things. And there's very few artists who have the ability to learn to improve at all of those things. You might be somebody who, no matter how much you work at your craft, you're not going to get that much better as an artist. But it might be that if you work your ass off, you might really learn and understand marketing and be able to make a good, if not great, living as an artist because you know how to market yourself. There might be artists who are never, ever, ever going to be great at business, but they can learn to get better. They take classes, or they study art books, or they just sit down at the table or the easel and study and work until they get better. And they can have a great career because they've worked their ass off. All of these things are true. And the problem is that it sounds like the tone of the questions, not necessarily from some of the older guys in the chat, but Negro Frazetta, this is a little bit aimed at you. I'm not throwing shade, but it's a little bit aimed at you. Instead of looking for a single answer, what you need to look at is where your passion lies and where you can improve. Because I know for myself, I'm better at improving at my art than I am at improving in marketing, but it doesn't mean that I shouldn't improve at marketing. In a perfect world, an artist would improve at all of those things, would improve at everything that they're weak at. But we don't live in a perfect world. There's only so many hours in a day. I haven't been able to spend as much time working on both marketing and my artistic craft as I should and would like to. So all of these things are true. And the decisions in terms of how we navigate that is very personal. Let's see here. Cassiel mentions, I can take some of your examples like Kim Jong-il. Internet did most of your, meaning his, marketing. Yeah, he was so amazing, and people just spread the word. On the writing, Amar, brother, you just, man, I got to have you back on the show again sometimes, because you answer most of the stuff you answer. It's literally like, I'm like, that's exact. You literally answered exactly what I said. Amar knows what he's talking about when it comes to the art, the story, the business, the marketing. And he says, number one, decide what your comic will be about. Next, figure out how many issues it will be. Plot and stories, build out the universe to cover those stories. It says, then complete the writing first because the story is the most important. Let's see here. Yes, all of that. I don't need to run through all of it because you've seen it in the people that are watching. Anyone who's watching live, if they're following in the chat, they know all of that. But for anyone watching later, I mean, Amar covered everything that I was going to say. So let's see here. Cassiel also says, I'm not saying there's a formula to becoming successful. I'm just saying some realities that there is in the world. And that's true. That's true. It sounds like we're on the same page in the sense that there's a lot of different ways to skin this cat in terms of art and business and creativity and making the world. Let's see here. Mr. Q says, I'm caught up in choosing the story's direction. I feel like I have so many ideas about where it should go and I can't decide. And yeah, Amar says, just pick one. I have 50 universe ideas, and ideas are good, but nothing without action. So pick universe, create it, and get at it. Yeah, that's it. There's nothing else to say. Just pick one, because it doesn't have to be quote unquote the right one. You pick the one, you tell the story, then you move on to the next story and the next idea and the next universe that you want to tell. You just keep picking and going. It's like you got to be like Muhammad Ali, stick and move, stick and move. Corey says, the idea that money validates your art is a tough burden to put on your creativity. I make art because I feel called to it. I make a living because I have to pay the bills. There's some crossover, but I prefer to keep them separated. I completely agree with Corey. I put my work for sale because I want to be able to spend more time doing the art, but it isn't what I do to pay the bills. And to be honest, if I had to pay the bills with my comic work, I probably might be doing stuff that I definitely would not be doing stuff that I choose to do. I would probably be pandering more, and I'd be doing a lot of stuff that I'm telling you not to do. Like, for instance, the thing I said, like, hey, you could probably make more money just doing like sexy chicks. That's stuff that, like I said, I do think I enjoy drawing that. However, it isn't what I spend most of my time doing. I think, but if I had to pay my bills doing with my art, then maybe I would shift gears, and that might be what I would spend more time doing. So let's see here. I'm going to skip a few more comments. See here. Yeah, James says, making art all day. Kind of like, I think you're saying Bekchitsky, who I only know generally. Honestly, I only know his work through hearing Chet Zar talk about him on the Dark Art Society podcast. I have seen Bekchitsky's work, and it is really dope, but he's not an artist I've particularly followed. I've probably more... H.R. Giger is probably more in vein of the artist that I followed closely. In fact, I've got a lot of his art books. I started looking at his artwork in the 90s. I worked at a bookstore in high school. I remember when we got copies of the Necronomicon, the Necronomicon 2 in, and they blew me away. I'd never seen anything like it before in my life. So, let's see here. Yeah, Amar is telling Mr. Q, plot it out, because once you know what the stories will be about, you know how it starts and ends. Mr. Q says, I know where it starts and ends. I just want to make sure the story that connects the two is engaging. Well, I will tell you, oh yeah, Amar says again what I was going to say. Plus, you can come back to it days, weeks, or months, years later without worrying or forgetting. Yeah, you kind of have to just jump in. You know what it is much like doing a thumbnail. You need to treat writing very similar to the way you treat artwork, in that you make the bad version first. You're trying to write something that's perfect right out of your head. And what you do is you put down the story, and the first version you do isn't going to be very good, and then you rewrite it. So stop trying to make it a perfect story. Stop trying. Okay, you're saying you want to make the tissue between the beginning and end engaging. Start by just writing connective tissue. Don't worry about whether it's engaging. Just connect them. Then say, all right, does this connection make sense? If it doesn't, rewrite it so that it makes sense, so it's logical. Once it's logical, you're like, all right, is it entertaining? That's when you come in and you start really fleshing it out and you try to say, all right, well, what can I do to make this more exciting? What can I do to make this, what do I do to turn this into the type of story where the reader can't put it down? That's the hard part. But don't try to just write it perfect out of your head, because you're sitting there and you're just thinking, wow, I have the story, but it's not right in my head. The only way you need to put the idea down on paper so that you can start moving the pieces around. Trying to do it inside of your head, it depends. So let me this way. I'm not going to say that there aren't writers who can do it. There are writers who can do that, who can work it all out in their head and then just sit down and start typing. But if you're having trouble with that, I recommend you start writing stuff down and just writing the story structure down, and then saying, all right, this is my version A of the story. It's my version B of the story, version C, D, E, F, G, H, I. Keep writing different versions of it till you get the version where you've worked out all the pieces. Let's see here. Cassiel says, you cannot separate art that you do from, he says, I know it's complicated when you do art to pay your bills, but you cannot separate art that you do from paying your bills from art, but you can, he's asking us a question. Can you not separate art you do pay for bills from that which you do for fun and escape from reality? I think that's exactly what Corey is talking about, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. Like I said, my comic book work is not what pays my bills. My toy design work is what pays the bills. My figure drawing work, which I'm doing right now, is not what pays the bills. If I wanted to make some money, I could be, either doing some freelance toy design, or I could be working on, again, the aforementioned sexy chicks. I could be drawing something that I know someone will pay me money for. So right now, what I do for joy and to escape reality is very, very separate. And that's a privilege. That's the other thing to keep in mind. A lot of people don't necessarily have the option in terms of having the time to do something just for fun that doesn't make money. Being able to do this is a privilege, but because it's a privilege, I take advantage of it. And I try to just make the things that I'm passionate about. Not everybody has that option. And that's why, here's the thing. When I talk about stuff like doing fan art because you're a fan of it and not just because it's something that's popular, that's also speaking from a place of privilege. And it's a bit unfair to people that are doing artwork just to cash in and make money. Because honestly, that's what commissions are. Commissions are, you put up your work online and then you say, hey, will you pay me to draw this? In fact, that's a real good thing right there. Negro Frazetta, if you just want to make money as an artist, put together your 10 best pieces. Put them together on put them either on a DeviantArt gallery, put them together on a ArtStation gallery, put them together on an Instagram feed, and then just say, DM me for commissions. And just reshare that link. Solicit commissions. That's it. That's it. You want to start making money from art? Solicit commissions. I'm not saying you're going to get commissions right away. Because that's the thing. I also don't do very many commissions. Most of the commissions I've ever done have been people who met me at conventions and either commissioned me at the show, or they reached out to me later, emailed me and say, hey, I would really love you to do my character or do an illustration of this. There's a guy I've designed a couple of tattoos for that I met at a convention. All of that just comes from people reaching out to you. But the point is that if you want to start making money right now from art, it sounds like a lot of your concern is just about the money side of art. If that's your concern, then start with the money side. Solicit commissions. You can do it today because, commissions don't always have to be photorealistic. You can do it in a lot of different styles. Generally, the people that's what commissions tend to be, people who do photorealistic pieces, and they're doing paintings of people's pets, or they're doing paintings of portraits of loved ones, of family members. You could do that. You can start making a living. I don't know if you can make a full-time living, but you can start doing it, get paid, and then slowly raise your prices. And what you do is you keep raising your prices until you get to the point where what you do is you start out priced low, $50 a commission, $100 a commission. You start out real low. And if you are slammed so that your commission list fills up and you're like, I don't have time to take anymore, that means your prices are too low. So then you slowly raise your price. In fact, that's the easiest way to do it, is to create, like, say, 5 slots for a commission. That's your commission list. And you just tell people, I'll take on 5 right now. And you take on those 5. If those lists don't fill up, then it means one of two things. Either your prices are too high, which is unlikely for new artists, or 2, your work isn't as good as it should be, which is not. Don't look at it as a humiliating embarrassment. If you put work out there and no one wants to buy it, it's not like the internet says, well, this person went and tried to put their artwork out too soon, so they're blackballed and they never have a career as an artist. No, you try it, you put your pieces out there, and if you don't get any commissions, then what you do is you say, all right, I'm going to look at all of these and say, what did I do wrong with them? And I'm going to do 5 new pieces that are better. And you put those 5 out. And you put those out, and all that matters is what your current portfolio is. If your current portfolio looks dope, then people will give you commissions. In fact, I mentioned a thing about doing pets and loved ones. You like drawing animals. Negro Frazetta, you love drawing animals. Start doing pet portraits. There is a huge market for pet portrait commissions, and you could just do that. So if you really want to make money right now and you want to try to be the John Singer Sargent of pets, all right? Just do that. Do people's dogs, cats, birds, whatever. Just do that, and you can make a living. You could make a living and probably quit your day job. And for those of you who are more experienced artists, you chime in. I am curious to hear if you agree with that you could make a full-time living just being a pet portrait artist. There's lots of people who do it of a wide variety of skill levels. Let me continue here because, again, I'm super, super behind on the comments. I'm going to skip past some of the writing stuff because I think Amar has Mr. Q covered. And I see Jay King popped in at this point a half hour ago. And he says he's at work. We'll get the replay. If you're watching the replay, you're going to laugh. Or at least I hope you laugh at the fact that I'm just getting your comment now because it's like a half hour after you left the comment. But you know what? I clown on myself. This is humbling that there's enough interesting conversation going on in the chat here, that you guys are showing up and having this interesting conversation, not just with me, but with each other. That's humbling and flattering. This is the thing that I love about live streaming, being able to talk to all you guys. So thank you for being here and making this such a particularly fun session. Let's see here. So Amar says, maybe move to Japan or Canada if you want to do animation. Japan would be hardcore, but they're diehard with animation and manga comics. Well, I will tell you, there's, animation workshops everywhere. I mean, let it this way. I think that it depends on where you live already, because LA, there's lots of animation houses here. Florida, I don't know if the animation studio in Disney Animation Studio in Florida is still open. In New York, I think there's Blue Sky, but also there's other animation studios. I would say if you're in New York, LA, Canada, Japan, yeah, those are the major hubs for animation. I mean, hell, you can learn Korean and move to South Korea. Let's see here. Cassiel says, Dr. Seuss, did you hear the Midnight Paintings? He would paint sometimes just for fun and to express, and you see how he's separate what he does for a job from what he does for fun. Yeah, I've never seen or heard of the Midnight Paintings, but I will check them out. In fact, I'm going to make a list for myself to check out Dr. Seuss Midnight Paintings. I'm going to look that up later. I am curious to see what he did just for fun. Yeah, I think that there is I think you definitely have to separate. By the way, so here's my second version at this piece, and for me, it doesn't have the anger or gnarliness. Like I've got a little bit of a Jonah Hex vibe of the one that I drew in class, but I don't know if I'm going to get necessarily a better drawing than this one. At least not while I'm talking. That's the big challenge: is doing all of this. I've been drawing the whole time while we're talking, and it's hard to do thoughtful analytical drawings while having very deep conversations about business and process. I'm gonna try and find another drawing to sketch over while we keep talking and we go through the chat. And hopefully I will catch up with all of that. All right. So the next one I'm gonna do. There's a pose here that John took. And it's just a guy in sort of a pirate coat. He's just leaning forward, kind of stepping away from us. So the main thing is that I feel like I didn't necessarily get the structure that well. So I'm going to work on redrawing that one and put more emphasis on kind of the figure work. But I'm going to be sketching on that while looking at more comments here. So let's see. Byron says, watch my own video to figure out what I should be doing. It's like that sometimes. Yeah, the comment I made before about the writing. You know, sometimes we forget our own advice. And it's one of those do as I say, not as I do type things. Like a lot of the stuff that people talk to me about that they're struggling with, I know what the right thing is, or I know what the answers are, but even I still struggle with doing them. Which just goes back to the thing that, you know, having rules to live by or having instructions and ideas, it all comes down to your actual execution. You know, you can have tons of advice, tons of thoughtful, good advice, but if you don't actually execute on that advice and actually do the things that you need to do, this is going to be challenging because I have to hold the drawing board up here and then I can't see the keyboard now while I'm doing this, while I'm drawing. It works. You know what? I'm just gonna flip to the next sheet and I'll keep drawing up at the top because it's gonna be too hard for me to draw and work via the live stream if I have to have my my board moved up covering the keyboard. So let's see here. Let's see here. Yeah, Amar says, back to talking about contests. The good thing is if you win, it's some free money, free advertising, plus you get a feature, then you'll be a paid artist creating comments on their platform. You know what? I would be curious to hear if there's anyone watching who has entered the Webtoons fight scene contest. And I'm curious what your thoughts are, or remember this way, if you're thinking about entering it. For those who don't know, if you head over to Webtoons right now, they have a contest there. You just, you know, like Amar said, it's just you post it has to be a 60 panel comic, full color, or it says a 60 panel comic in color, not necessarily full color. You can do limited or spot color, but the idea that you do a 60-page comic with a fight scene, and if it wins, you get featured on there. So I'm curious if anyone is interested in doing that, and if they're gonna try it out. For me, it's like I said before, it's not that it's not worth it, it's that it's gonna distract me from my larger goals. So Amar says, for less than a month of work, 50,000, he says it's a gamble, but you can get more stuff that you can package and sell on the back end. It sounds to me like you are going to do it because it sounds like you're talking about all the pros. I hope that you do it, and I want to hear about your experience. In fact, I hope you're live streaming your process of making that Webtoons comic. What's the deadline, and how long do you have to finish it? So I see Cassiel mentioned. Let's see. Oh wait, we were talking about that. Yeah, Cassiel says, my English is not so good, so if I do some mischief, please correct me. I'm from another country. I'm not gonna, don't feel bad about fumbling in the chat because I only speak English and a little bit of Spanish. Those are the only two languages that I have. I wish I had the ability to speak and type in multiple languages. So the fact that you're having such a deep conversation in a language other than your native tongue is humbling. So I believe me, you have nothing to be corrected about or apologize. You have nothing to apologize for. Thank you for participating in a conversation that isn't in your native tongue. I appreciate that. Let's see. Negro Facetta says, did you just break a Conti 1710B? Yes, I very much did. Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. I do think that they're great pencils, but I found that they don't break any less than my my beloved General 2Bs. So even though I've used pretty much a whole box of the Pierre Noir, the Conti 1017, the blah blah blah, the 1710Bs, I like them. I think they're great, but I don't know, the generals just seem like it ends up being about the same as what I've been doing in the past. I like working with them. Wow, so many. Let's see. I see Mark Bernal's in the chat. Hey, Mark, I'll get to your comment in a sec. I'm still scrolling back up and catching up. And you know what though? This is really cool. There's been so much conversation here. Let's see. Yeah, Mr. Cube mentioned he's still here, which is funny because now I'm a half hour past the last time he was here. Let's see here. Yeah, Amar says in terms of the contest, you can spend a month just working on finishing a few pieces of art. He says, I look at it as an option to test yourself. And he says, I hear you, but that's the same as me spending a month or two creating art for prints, not selling of them. So yes, it's all a gamble. He said, plotting is a way. Oh, and back to the writing, he also says plotting is a way, is way more organized and it guarantees you can come back to story at any point in time. Yeah, I mean, all of it's a gamble. So for me, it is, I'm just repeating myself. The fact that I don't want to discourage people from entering a contest. I want people to enter those contests. It's more that I feel like I want to explain why I'm not doing it, which is simply I'm stubborn, I'm single-minded, and if I start chasing one contest, I'll chase another, and then I'll never get the thing that I want to do done. Or, you know, you get those people who have a great career working at an animation studio or working for a video game company. And then after working for those places for 20 years, they say, yeah, but all I've ever wanted to do is my own thing and I never did it. I have seen how easy it is. And even now, in my day job, I'm making a living doing other people's ideas and not getting to do the thing that I really want to do. And if I get to the end of my life, am I going to wish that I had that $50,000, or am I going to wish that I made my own comic book? So that is my point, is that it's not about discouraging anyone. I think the contests are a great idea. It's more that I'm just, like I said, I'm explaining my own personal decisions. So let's see here. And Amar makes a great comparison in terms of plotting and pantsing for animation. He says that pantsers go with the flow based on the ending or the idea. He said plotting is like pose-to-pose animation, then adding the keys where needed. Pantsers like animators who do straight-ahead animation. It says both have their uses. You can combine them like people do in animation. That's very true in terms of writing. And then Castiel says, yeah, why not write your story straight ahead first and then plotting later? Organizing, better fixing, or planning straight ahead later and then oscillating between the two. You know what? I completely agree. I had a friend who was really struggling with a novel for many years, and I told him, you know, you can always write the book and then write your outline afterwards. You know, and do the organization that way. So Mr. Q, like Byron just said, you really have to find the method that works best for you. There's so many different ways to work this out. Let's see here. Byron also says, I hate hyper plotting and outlining. It kills the story and enjoyment for me. I do better with pantsing. See, right there. Yeah, everyone has a different approach and method. All of our brains process story differently. And that's the most important thing is try. The important, this is the thing. What stops many people is that they don't know what works for them yet. So they want to find the quote unquote right way before they start. You need to make one story. You need to make a few stories. I mean, hell, both Eye of the Gods and Morningstar are both projects that I tried pantsing first, failed at pantsing, and forced myself to go back and fix them by plotting. So so when I say that I'm a plotter, it's not like I have disdain or a dislike for pantsing. I tried it because I wanted to do it that way, and it didn't work for me. So you may try plotting, and you may be like Byron. You're like, I've tried, and every time I try to plot, it just sucks the life out of the story for me. That may be the case for you, but you're not going to know until you just make the thing. Let's see here. Let's see here. Lots of great comments. I'm skipping through a few of them because I'm so far behind. I finally got to Mark's comment, and he says, I plot the page level and the majority of the plot points, keeping the final page details open for inspiration. Yeah, see, that's the great thing. As you know, as Cassiel said, the mixing and matching instead of trying to find one right way to do it. The mix and match is the nature. I think that's where the interesting happens for creators. And the other thing is, you may try one method for one particular story. You may say, all right, it turns out that I am a pantser, and that's how I work. And then you may come across a story later on in your life that no matter how hard you try to write from the seat of your pants, it's not working, and you have to plot it. And just the same way I've said that I'm a plotter, I may come up against a story. Who knows? Maybe that's the problem I'm having with my current story, is that I'm trying to plot it too much. And it may be that this is the story that I have to pants. It's not just specific to the individual creator. It's also specific to the individual project. Not every project has to be written the same way or can be written the same way. And it can be frustrating to be somebody who has what they think of as their method for doing stories, and then all of a sudden finding that their method stops working. But this is a great quote that I've heard from multiple writers, but the only one I can think of off the top of my head is Lee Child, the guy who writes the Jack Reacher novels. But what he said was that while you learn from writing each novel, in the end, what you have learned how to write is that book. When you move to the next book, you have to learn how to write the next book. The writing process always changes. You always have to keep learning and growing. So let's see here. I know Amar has a lot of great metaphors in there. He's talking about something here where it says, when you brain it like a string of Chinese firecrackers, he says he has those creators have one central idea, but that you string it. But when you brain it like a string of Chinese firecrackers, there's a lot of great stuff here. But now I'm jumping around a bit, talking about older stories, newer stories, writing without a guide. Let's see here. Negro Facetta mentioned, listen, he said, I'm burned out on the Watts Atelier. The last 2 terms, I could not find a single class I wanted to take. I think I'm going to fill a sketchbook with Derek Laufman, Master Studies. It'll be fun. You know what? It's good to switch up. If you've been studying from one particular instructor or one style, one teaching approach for a while, it's good to change directions and see what else it does for you. And like I said, the most important thing, I live it this way. If you had to choose between doing master studies or drawing from life, I would still take drawing from life. But as we talked in the last Patreon live stream, you got to get in front of that model. That for me, I think that both are important. But if I could only choose one, drawing from the live model has been the number one thing that has improved my art education. And that's a hill I'll die on. Like, there's lots of different things you can do educationally to learn, but working from the live model is the most important thing. For those of you who have never taken a figure drawing session, we talked in the beginning of this live stream. I was mentioning to James about the Gallery Girls. just type in figure drawing workshop and your zip code or whatever country you're in, whatever the equivalent of your regional code is, whatever your postal code is. If you're working internet, if you're living outside of the United States, putting in your postal code and figure drawing workshop or life drawing workshop, and just finding a session and going. I love working from the live model, and that ever since I made that a permanent part of my personal growth, it's been the #1 thing that has helped me advance. I mean, to the point that obviously I'm working on correcting my drawings from class right now. Love me some figure drawing. Let's see here. Byron says, personally, I never work on more than 1 or 2 stories at a time, so it's not much of an issue for me. That's the conversation that's been going on in the chat is more about like working on stories and then leaving them for later and coming back to them. And I, for myself, what I tend to do is I just have a folder, a Google Doc that I call idea files. And when I come up with an idea for a comic book or story, I just write a paragraph or 2 in that folder and then forget about it and go back to what I'm doing. Now, if I end up coming back and thinking about more ideas that add on top of that story later on, then what I'll eventually do is I will break that thing off into its own document. And it has its own kind of working document for a story that I will come back to do someday. But generally speaking, all of this stuff is just working ideas that I haven't had time to work on. It's just a work in progress folder for writing. And I'm just like, when I have chance, I'll come back and I'll add to it, and I just sort of peck away at it. And when I'm done with whatever I'm working on, usually I have a good idea well before I finish a comic what my next comic book is going to be. Like I already have my next 3 projects that I would like to do picked out. And for a while, I was debating over which one of those I was going to do next. But yeah, that's how I approach it. Is I just make notes, and whenever I think of stuff, I add to it. But otherwise, I can just come back, and some way you can flip through an old sketchbook and look for things. I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was. The problem with drawing, with this figure drawing thing in my lap, is that I keep scooting down. So I'm gonna move this up a little bit, move the camera up a little bit, so I can hit the keyboard and still keep the drawing in frame. Gotta adjust the camera a tiny bit. There we go. That's a little bit better. Okay. Yeah, all right. Still a bunch of, let's see. Oh, yeah, now we're catching up to some of the stuff I was talking about a little while ago. Yeah, Amar says, I see people on Twitch do portraits for people and animals, and that's all they do. Let's see here. Amar says, in terms of working on multiple stories, and he says, yeah, I work like an octopus, but I only have 1 brain and not 8 like an octopus. So that's my issue. Yeah, well, yeah, you can only draw 1 story at a time, but there are people like, I mean, you look at a lot of full-time comic book writers, and again, those are people who are doing it full-time, but they might be writing. I think a good example would be somebody like Howard Chaykin, who can write and draw a comic book for himself. He can also be writing a comic book for another artist, and he can also be drawing another comic book for a writer. Now, he might not be doing all those in the same month, but he's a guy who can work in all different capacities and work at multiple levels. You look at there are comic book writers like, say, Scott Snyder, who can be working on 5 different titles, and he could be working on an indie book for himself. I don't know if he's retired from working for DC or whether he still has DC stuff he's doing, but the fact that he could be doing some stuff for DC, he could be doing some stuff for himself on the side, You look at somebody like somebody like Brian Bendis, who can be writing like 5 or 6 different titles, for DC and have like a whole wide variety of things going on and doing his own, indie projects. Writing multiple projects, I think, is easier than drawing multiple projects. I mean, there's only so many John Burns and Jack Kirby's. There's very few people who can write more than 1 book a month. I mean, draw more than 1 book a month. So let's see here. Byron says, I'm slightly interested in that contest, but truthfully, I don't like the Webtoons format. He said, scroller comics don't do it for me. I get that. I also get like a lot of people who just simply don't like reading digital at all. I have found that it started to grow on me because first, I have become more open to digital because I don't have the physical space to store more comics. And if I want to read anything new, I have to read digital because I don't have any place to put them. And it drives me nuts, the idea of buying a book, reading it, and then getting rid of it. The stuff I like to read is stuff I tend to like to hold on to. So I started reading digital. Sometimes it's just a matter of buying a Humble bundle. Like I got an Image Humble bundle a while back. I still haven't read everything in it, but it has like a bunch of Walking Dead, some work from, who are the guys that did Girls? The Luna Brothers. Some work from the Luna Brothers. It's too long because I still haven't finished reading it. But it's too long ago that I got it. But I actually just recently got the Humble bundle of Terry Moore. I'm a big fan of Terry Moore from Strangers in Paradise. And I have all of I have most of his books in physical form. I've got Strangers in Paradise. I've got the Strangers in Paradise 25. I've got Echo. I love Rachel Rising, but he's got some new series that he's done. 5 Years Later, Serial. I think he's got 1 or 2 other side projects, smaller projects he's done. And I'm just like, I'm out of room for physical space. And I've wanted to start reading his books digitally. And so this Humble bundle was a chance to get everything that he's done, including the books that I already own, in digital PDF. And I jumped on it because, I don't want to get rid of my physical copies. But if for some reason, like let's say my wife and I move, it would be okay for me to let go of all of those physical Strangers in Paradise comics because I have them all digitally now and I purchased them from him, from his Humble bundle. So in that, the whole point being is that once I kind of got eased into reading comics digitally, now reading stuff on the phone and just being able to scroll through panel by panel, it is a different reading experience. And you lose the sense of composition of the entire page. I don't like losing that composition, and I get it, but the convenience of reading digitally means that what I'm losing doesn't bother me as much as it used to. Because you certainly can enjoy the page composition of a comic book on a mobile device. Let's see here. Byron also mentions Terry Moore's YouTube channel is a goldmine as well. I've watched some of his live streams, but I actually haven't watched a ton of stuff on his YouTube channel. Sometimes he'll post a short that I'll watch. Let's see here. Byron mentions, I'm fine with digital and web comics. I specifically don't like the vertical scroller format. It disagrees with my eyes. He said, maybe if I read more comics on my phone instead of my desktop, that would be different. What's interesting is, do you have the same experience when you look at side scrolling panel by panel? Like if you read a comic on Instagram where they put it up so that you just slide through the way that you would slide through. Like 3-Panel Crimes is a great Instagram feed where they tell a crime story in 3 panels as a comic. That's a great one. And I find that to be a very pleasant mobile reading experience. And part of that is that it is specifically designed with 3 panels. So it's designed to be a short reading experience. You're not trying to read a whole graphic novel on your phone. And I think that could get exhausting. The point being is that I'm curious if reading something that is mobile but horizontally scrolling would be less distracting, because the point you're making just about the vertical scrolling, not agreeing with you, I get that. Like our brains are used to processing stuff in a certain way, and it can ruin the viewer experience just by giving you an experience that your brain isn't prepared to process, or it just isn't tuned to. So I get that. And yeah, Amar agrees that the Humble Bundles are a great value. Yeah, and he says, but you get so much stuff that you have to find time to review all the stuff. I agree. That's actually kind of the problem with modern media in general, is whether it's comics, film, anime, TV shows, books. There's so much stuff that we're drowning in media. Like, I don't have time to be up on half the stuff. And most of the stuff that people recommend to me to make good, solid recommendations, I still don't have time to catch up on. Let's see here. Amar says they now have one with boys and a lot of comics where the female are the lead in comics like Red Sonja and Vampirella. I'll have to take a look and see what's going on Humble Bundle. I don't know. Let's see here. Yeah, Byron says side-scrolling is fine with me. It feels very natural, like a comic strip. And he says there's something about the scrolling vertically that bugs my eyes. I can't really explain it. Yeah, I can see that, though. That makes sense. Maybe for me, because I've spent a lot of time scrolling on Instagram, that the horizontal scrolling doesn't seem to bother me that much. Or the vertical scrolling doesn't seem to bother me that much. But yeah, I get it. So guys, guess what? We have caught up to the chat, and it only took an extra 50 minutes for me to catch up with everybody. This was a marathon session. This was super fun. So I feel like I just made it. I don't feel like this drawing is necessarily better than the original one that I did, but I just feel like I gave it more of a sense of structure and tightened up the silhouette. So that's the original drawing that I was doing the study from. And so this one is just sort of like polishing it. So yeah, I hope that it was interesting, or at least it was visually stimulating to have something of me figure drawing while I was on the screen. And let me know if you guys are interested in me sharing more figure drawing studies during the live stream. Let me know, because I haven't done this in a long time. And I'm open to doing it more, because figure drawing, even though I don't mention it as much here, it is a huge part of my weekly self-improvement, my weekly growth in my studies as an artist, taking figure drawing classes. And then more importantly, doing these things where I analyze my work after class and look for places where I can correct it and understand places where my understanding, where I can understand places where my skills are falling, where I don't have as much of a grasp on structure, volume, anatomy, proportion. I can analyze those things and say, all right, where am I weaker? Where can I improve? So let's see here. Yeah, Amar asks, did I complete the Gorgon Medusa series? No, it's not completed yet. I have one more. Well, let it this way. The candlelight version I have. Let me go back to the main screen. The candlelight version that I have is just about done, and I'll end up posting that in the I'll show it at the start of the next live stream, and I will post it when I make it available for sale. But I have like 3 more ideas to do on top of that series that I just need to, like I said, not enough hours in the day. So Amar said, are you just taking a brief break? Yeah, I just wasn't in the mood to work on it today. Well, part of it's the fact that I normally do those studies, the figure drawing studies I was doing. I normally do those maybe the day or two after figure drawing class. And I've just been slammed with work this week and haven't had a chance to look at my figure drawings at all. So I thought, I'm going to have to do that. It's what I was going to be doing after this live stream anyway, was I'm going to work on my homework. So I thought, why not work on it here with you guys? So again, if seeing me do more figure drawing related stuff, more figure drawing related content on the live stream is interesting, let me know. I'll share that kind of stuff more often. So thank you. And a great comment. It looks at Xerxes. Xerxes86 says, I just wanted to express my appreciation for this channel. It's so rare to find a comic creator who's both writer and artist. I aspire to be. Thank you. You know what? Thank you, Xerxes, for watching. I greatly appreciate the kind words. I I'm glad that this channel is inspirational, inspiring to you, and it's humbling to me that I can be inspiring to other fellow creators, because I look at this more like I'm a work in progress. I'm always growing, I'm always learning. I still have only published a handful of graphic novels. So for me, I still feel like even at my advanced age, I'm still early on in this journey, and I'm kind of making it and growing and learning with you guys as well. So being able to inspire my fellow creators is humbling, and it's an honor for me, and I appreciate you being here. So I'll, like I said, I do these live streams every week. Wednesday, 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. The replays are always available to watch. So, I mean, hell, I've been on YouTube for over a decade now. So there's hundreds of videos to watch. But you can always watch the next one here. Next week, I'll post links. So make sure, like I say, everyone ends it this way. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that notification bell to get notifications when the new live streams come up. I'll be posting the link for next week's live stream shortly after this one, so you guys can go ahead and hit the notification bell for that one as well. Again, thank you to all of my patrons. I've got a ticker running at the bottom of the screen for all of my Patreon subscribers, everyone who's been supporting this channel, supporting my comics. You guys are all able to read my comic books on Patreon. If you subscribe, I've got a feed where I've got them all up digitally for everyone to read. Head on over to patreon.com/Jeremy. It's patreon.com/GERIMI. You can read my comic books on there. We also do a 2 to 3 hour long live stream twice a month, first Tuesdays of the month. We have a thing we call Art Book Study Group, where we sit down with some of the best art books around and we do studies from the books. We were talking about master studies a lot in this live stream. I've been doing master studies from Walt Reed's The Figure. He was one of the guys who was one of the teachers in the famous artist courses. He's got a book that I find, it's my personal opinion, The Figure by Walt Reed is one of the best books on the fundamentals of drawing. In terms of just basic volume, basic anatomy, basic proportion, like what you need in order to draw the human figure, that book to me is one of the, if not the best book on it. So we've been doing deep studies of that. So you get that. And there's a backload of videos. If you guys become a patron, you can go on there and there's like 50 hours at least of videos. No, more than 50 hours, probably 50 videos. They're like 3 hours long each of me doing studies of that. There's also studies from George Bridgman you can check out. All these things for as little as $2 a month. You can become a Patreon subscriber. There's higher tiers for higher things. Me doing drawovers of people's work. We have a critique thread where we share artwork, get feedback from each other. All of that is on Patreon. There's links in the description for this video, but there aren't links on Twitch. So again, patreon.com/GERIMI. Newsletter.jeremy.net. You can get a free digital sketchbook where you sign up for my monthly newsletter. That newsletter, I deliver a blog post right to your inbox once a month. Talk about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, things that are fueling me creatively. I have it's called my media diet. I'll have recommendations of things to read. I also will post animated GIFs, kind of like the public posts that I share on social media, except also include a little bit of writing. Sometimes that writing is about figure drawing, sometimes it's about what I'm working on in field of comics, sometimes it's about whatever projects I'm working on, writing, more thoughts about my creative process, just more of an insight into what I've got going on. It's a little love letter from me to you. You get that once a month delivered right into your inbox. As long as you check those, add me to your contacts, so don't end up in your spam filter. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comic books, or if you read digitally on Comixology or Kindle, go to amazon.jeremy.net. They'll forward you to my Amazon author page. You can pick up books like my first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods. It is a self-contained psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control. It's black and white, 140-odd pages. I forget how many pages this book is. I'm the writer, the artist. I did the whole damn thing. Did everything but run through the printing press. My most recent project book, Project Morningstar. It's Lucifer's Fall from Heaven, told as a Western. Volume 1 contains issues 1 through 4. Volume 2 contains issues 5 through 8, the conclusion to the series. It's a 2-volume series. Both volumes have extensive back matter, character designs, character sketches, thumbnails, page layout, script excerpts, and more. Get all of that at amazon.jeremy.net. Like I said, links in the description, or you can just go to my main website, which is jeremy.net, and there'll be links to all of this from there. That's GERIMI.net. Again, everyone, thank you for hanging out. I appreciate the comments, the feedback, the very deep chat and conversation we had here. And anyone who wants to comment on any of these things, feel free to leave comments on the video after the fact. I try to read all the comments and respond to them in the comments, if not respond to them in the next video. So again, everyone, thank you so much. That's it for now. Go be creative.